One thing that we don't talk maybe enough on this show about is AI's impact on the climate. I think this was maybe a hotter button issue earlier on when there was all these kind of viral studies that compared, the number of questions you ask ChatGPT with a certain amount of water. And then you had businesses maybe saying, hey, AI isn't for us. It's bad for the environment. It's bad for your company's climate goals. But here we are many years later since the ChatGPT moment, now more than 3 years. And I think it's time to have maybe a more in depth conversation about how companies can align their AI goals with their climate goals as well. So, whether you work in a field related to the environment or maybe you're in charge of ESG at your company, I think today's show is going to be for you. And I'm excited to talk about it here on Everyday AI. What's going on, y'all? My name is Jordan Wilson, and welcome to Everyday AI. This is an unedited, unscripted, daily live stream podcast and free daily newsletter helping everyday business leaders like you and me not just keep up with what's happening in the world of AI because it's nonstop, but how we can make sense of it and grow our companies and our careers. So if that's what you're trying to do, it starts here. But to take it to the next level, make sure to go to our website at youreverydayai.com. Go sign up for the free daily newsletter. We're going to be recapping the highlights from today's interview, as well as keeping you up to date with all of the other AI news that you need to be the smartest person in AI at your company or in your department. So without further ado, I'm excited for today's guest and for this conversation. And I know it's going to be a very helpful one. So live stream audience, if you could, please help me welcome to the show our guest for today, Ashutosh Ahuja, who is the Enterprise Architecture Lead at Starbucks. Ashu, thank you so much for joining the Everyday AI Show.
Absolutely, Jordan. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here. And this already reminds me of the good conversations I've had in the past. So I'm thrilled.
All right. Yeah, this is going to be a good one for sure. But Ashu, before we get started, just let our audience know a little bit about your background and all kind of like what your role at Starbucks entails.
Absolutely. I'm Enterprise Architect Lead at Starbucks. I focus on sustainable coffee house solutions. My work looks at the full store build life cycle, essentially from everything, the technologies we choose to build and design the stores for sustainability and the ESG compliance across our operations. That's the gist of it.
No, that's great. And maybe for some of our audience that isn't, super in tune with the ESG, right? So environmental, social governance, right? I remember like 10 years ago having to look that up, right? Coming from a smaller company, I'm like, what the heck? But, maybe can you talk a little bit about kind of why, AI has become over the last couple of years, maybe more highlighted than other recent technologies, especially when it comes to environmental concerns?
For sure. I think the biggest highlight of the AI has been how rapidly it has evolved and touched everyday users. Many times back when 10, 15, 20 years ago, when cloud, excuse me, cloud was hot, it everyday user could not really relate to it. It was still at a business level, or the end users weren't really feeling the kick of it. With AI, uh, the end users were the first one who adopted to it. The businesses started coming into it. In a way, this is the other way around conversation. So when end users they come in a mass, it creates certainly the positive. At the same time, it actually adds more of a carbon footprint because more data centers, more GPUs, and everything. So they are very related, and I think the reason why this got a bigger hype out of everything else in the last 100 years or so, in my opinion, based on I'm not that old, so I've been reading about things. Uh, Primarily around how quickly users adapted to it, and then all the negatives came along with it, right? What impact it has in the environment.
Yeah, and I think that potential negative side or the potential downside or the environmental impact has really been thrust into the spotlight a little more recently, right? When you see
Yeah.
these the big tech companies making these $100 billion investments in these data centers, right? And
Yeah.
now all of a sudden you have everyday people like me reading about, water cooling for GPUs, right? And the amount of energy that's needed to run these AI data centers. Should, right? And maybe this is more for our enterprise audience that, have companies that have to make climate pledges and things like that. But how should companies be looking at the trade-off, right, between investing in AI and maybe being more efficient with the environmental toll said AI may ultimately have?
Yeah, I think we have to be cognizant of how much footprint we leave for our kids and then generations to come. And I think at the same time, I certainly feel in the long run, it is going to offset whatever carbon footprint we're doing, or maybe the good for the humanity. I was reading something on LinkedIn maybe about a couple of weeks ago. It could detect breast cancer 5 years before it even happens.
Mm.
So imagine evolving to, I know we're not there yet. Imagine evolving to a level where you could detect something that bad disease, which helps you save lives. And I think if you start to compare it, and there are many examples comes like this, then then I think it speaks on its own. So carbon footprint, though it is very, very, very important, but the amount of value it adds, or it could add in the long run, certainly offsets everything else.
Yeah, and that's a great point. And I think some of this conversation goes back to that original study that I kind of alluded to in the opening there. I think what it was is there was a 2023 study that said, for every 20 to 50 questions you ask ChatGPT, it was 500 milliliters of water. And I think that maybe that study very early on caused a lot of maybe smaller companies to say, hey, maybe AI isn't for us, right? Look at this impact. Do you think now that companies should still be, looking at their AI usage, maybe on the smaller and medium-sized side, to studies like that and saying, hey, we shouldn't use AI at our company? Is that something companies should actually be asking themselves?
They can ask, but I think they should certainly look to adopt AI. It has way, way more advantages than not using it. I'll give you something super simple example. Nest thermostat. Yes, it's owned by Google now, but back when it was not acquired by Google, it was a smallish company. Yes, it was big valued. It was a smallish company, started very, very small. It uses machine learning to detect your patterns, how much temperature you like it, what at what time of the day, and it actually adjusts that. And it also has an impact on your carbon footprint. Low energy bills, less the temperature, less electricity usage, and thus less carbon footprint. But from a smaller enterprises or the smaller companies, they certainly should. At the same time, I think we need to be cautious. It's a very tempting thing to do. I remember back when cloud was hot and everybody hopped on, and there were stories and posts on LinkedIn and everywhere that there was a bill from somebody about $200,000-$400,000 because compute was running. So I think we need to be cognizant. Yes, everybody should try. It has so much advantages, from productivity saving to bringing more people in, bringing more businesses in, and improving your overall efficiency, the way you do it, the way you operate. But got to be cautious.
Mm.
It is certainly very helpful in day-to-day life.
Yeah, and maybe what metrics that companies, if they still want to, have climate goals, if they still want to, have that philanthropic side of being, putting the environment first, but they still do want to use AI, right? Are there certain metrics that they should be looking at? In terms of, again, this isn't my space, right? The amount of energy used, measuring carbon footprint, like how can companies still do both, but then say on the back end, like, yes, we are still being, environmentally friendly, even though we are still using large language models. So maybe what are some of those metrics or things for those companies to focus on?
Yeah, so carbon footprint is certainly a big thing, but I think the metrics that are more important are more on identifying the patterns that you have in terms of in how your business operates. Looking at foot traffic, a small business, a mom and pop cake shop, they open, let's say, 7 days a week, and they can detect the pattern. On when the most customers are coming in. Do they come in between 8 to 10 in the morning, or do they come after 11, or things like that? Is there more footfall? That's the one. That's the one pattern and the one metric. Footfall traffic, is that more on weekends or more on Fridays? There are patterns like this that a small businesses essentially can look at it and then go from there, from whether their investments perspective, whether they're more compliant with the ESG goals or not.
Mm. When you are looking at the future of AI, right? And it's hard for anyone to predict what might be happening in 5 years, let alone 5 weeks. But in terms of AI's impact with companies' climate goals, what are some things that you're most excited about for the future of AI and its potential impact on what might be possible that we aren't even thinking about today?
That's a good one. I think it's mainly about how value you're able to drive out of it, especially when you look at your business goals and how well you're adapting it. And I think it is important in terms of bringing more revenue. It is less talked about, and especially small businesses, those who rely on word of mouth sort of marketing. The sentiment matters a lot. 5 years from now, I think many companies should and will be using a lot of sentiment analysis, if they aren't doing it anyway, to look at how the brand is progressing. I remember back when I worked for Subway. Uh, uh, before I go into any of that, I just want to frame the discussion. I'm speaking from my own personal experience, not as a professional capacity from Starbucks. Back when I worked for Subway, and Subway was going over a big shift in brand narrative and the marketing perspective. Around 5 years ago, they did a whole menu revamp, and we were looking at the social media, how the sentiment is, and Subway is a $1 billion company, and the smaller companies, smaller brands should also look at investments like this. So 5 years from now, I think it's still too far ahead. Everybody should look at this, using the tools at their disposal to do analysis like this to see where the market is heading, where customer sentiment is heading, because that would drive a lot of business and that will allow you to serve your customers more effectively and tweak your business model, and look and hear the customers' feedback.
Mm. So you kind of already gave, one good example on, kind of the other side of AI, right? Like you can look at AI as, oh, it's, consumes a lot of power and all these data centers, but yeah, it can detect, maybe certain illnesses or diseases earlier than if you weren't using AI. Do you have any other examples specifically on the environmental side, on how AI can actually maybe more than offset, right, the carbon footprint in terms of what it can help on the environmental or the climate side?
Yeah, I'll give it two, in fact. So I about a year ago, I was in Toronto and I was looking at some projects for some colleges who are affiliated with University of Toronto. Students there, they developed a camera vision to detect the waste, the kind of waste. So there's a big problem when you throw plastics. I'm glad states are banning now when you throw plastic, and it had a lot of impacts to it. They developed camera vision and a sensor which actually detects what and along with and verifies along with the weight of a product to see where it should be discarded. Should it be recycled or should be discarded? So it's yes, it is using a lot of resources in which gets talked about, and I think we have already started seeing some impacts in a day-to-day life where you have benefits in terms of less sorting of waste at waste facilities. That means less diesel, less petrol, less gas, a lot of many other things which goes unnoticed and they are behind the scene. It helps offset in those ways. So yes, it may get talked about. It uses 500 metric ton of water to run a data center. I'm just making up the numbers for now, but the benefits are far more than impact it has. Another one I remember, this was again 10, 12 years ago, 10 years ago, I think. Uh, I was working for Cigna as a consultant, and Cigna was doing some sort of an acquisition with Express Scripts, and we needed to do the contact center modernization. And there was a lot about AWS compute. We were from on-prem to AWS. We needed to go there, and we even looked at auto scaling options. And when we did that, it brought our compute down, resources down. I think it even saved thousands of dollars per week, and again, less likely to get noticed in a day-to-day life, but it has a bigger impact because less compute means less energy means less carbon footprint, and better ESG metrics. If you're a public company, which is even a big thing because you have a lot of SEC filings and everything, but even for a smaller company, it helps. The only thing with this is it's it's more like this. When something goes wrong, it goes in the deepest pocket,
Mm.
and when the positives are less likely to come out in front of everyday user because this is a behind the scene metric. Uh, but uh, but I can assure you, someone who works in this field, it has a big impact, whether it gets in front of us or not.
Yeah, and I love those two examples that you gave, and even one I've been seeing a lot personally, right? I'm in Chicago, so it seems like it's one of those cities where they're trying out these kind of like delivery robots, right? So delivering food, and at first I'm like, okay, I don't really understand this, and it's obviously using a lot of AI to optimize delivery, computer vision, to make sure that little delivery robots don't run into little kids or get hit by cars. And at first I'm like, okay, I don't really see the point of this. But then when you read about it a little bit more, it's like, okay, this is probably really cutting down on just the pollutants and, more getting more cars maybe, off the road, and, cleaner energy and all those things. Maybe is like, what are some of the industries that you might see maybe adopting AI a little bit more quickly in order to maybe have a greener footprint? Delivery is one I've just kind of seen offhand. But yeah, are there certain sectors that you really see a lot of potential in that maybe we're not there yet, but there's a lot of potential?
Yeah. So let me touch on this delivering, and then I'll speak on a sector too. I used to think exactly like you. How is this like? It's going to cut jobs. People are depending on it. Yes, it is going to do it at some extent, but cities like Manhattan, Chicago, they're already very crowded. and having someone on a scooter or a car delivering food, it adds more congestion at the same time. And using the robots, I think it is fascinating. So let me speak on the industry side now. I'm a board member for one of a company in India. It's in the renewable energy space, and it's a very hardcore run industry in a way that they develop a lot of big plants uh, which actually uses alternative energy to alternate waste to generate energy, be it your home food waste or something else. They don't use that industry. Don't rely on AI a lot, and I think there's a huge opportunity, uh, primarily around those machines. They cost 200,000, half a million. They're big machines, and right now the maintenance is, especially in that industry, is like we'll just look at it when something breaks. Imagine leveraging machine learning and predictive analytics on it to see when I can do a predictive maintenance versus something a reactive maintenance. So that's a big opportunity. It yes, it will add a cost to begin with. You need IoT data to feed back to you, and you need some models to run on it to analyze when to do it. But in the long run, that cost is going to offset in, I think, in less than 3 years, depending on what your investments are, obviously. But that industry is very underutilizing AI, in my opinion.
Mm. Yeah, and speaking of the future and being more efficient, it's something I'm always trying to keep up with and make sense of. But it seems like the AI frontier labs are getting more and more efficient in terms of their next and newest models. It seems like models maybe that could have been trillions of parameters, 2 years ago, are now getting into hundreds of billions, and maybe more will run locally, right? Which then would reduce some of that carbon footprint or some of the need to go to the cloud every single time. Might there be a point where in a couple of years, just the models are smaller, more efficient, more edge AI, that this is less of a conversation? Or do you think that just the capabilities are going to keep increasing, so it's always going to be, climate and AI is always going to be this kind of a balance?
I think models are going to keep increasing, and the climate and AI, they're always going to be sort of at intersection at some point. But I personally feel this this overpowers it actually, the value that you get out of it is way bigger than in the long run. It looks like this right now, like when you start to have material results that impact mass population. Right now, the results that we have in front of us, they're not mass produced, right? Chat GPT, Gemini, these models, yes, they're mass used, but not in a layman perspective. When I say detecting the breast cancer example I said, right? Or doing something which literally has an impact on everyday user. When those things start to become more normal, that's when these conversations start to subside down. So I think these will continue to mass produce, and I think companies would, or even the smaller users would continue to leverage it because it actually it can bring a lot of revenue to you if you do it right.
Mm. So we've covered a lot in today's conversation, but as we wrap up, what is your one most important takeaway for business leaders that are, wanting to maybe see bigger and better returns on AI, yet at the same time, ESG is a top priority, and climate goals are still a top priority. What's your one most important takeaway message?
Uh, go go slow. At the same time, don't hesitate to try something new. It has more advantages. Listen to someone who has direct experience in it, not me in general, right? Those who you trust around you. Uh, at the same time, be cognizant. Don't try to ride the hype train. Uh, look at your business, look at the model you're in, and then look for the right investments. Because at the same, it, I trust you. I think this is going to be the next big thing, or it is the next big thing, in my opinion, for generations to come. One big thing, in my opinion, that often gets overlooked: human in the loop. Those who are not in the tech, this is very techy term, human in the loop. It's you always have to have a human instincts. If you think something isn't right, uh, trust it, and trust your judgment to kind of look at it again. So if you keep these sort of goals in mind, I think the results would far outweigh the hesitations of the investments we have today.
Mm. Great words of advice. And Ashu, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to join the Everyday AI Show. We really
Absolutely.
appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thanks for having me. Take care.
All right. And if you miss anything, y'all, it's all going to be in our newsletter. So if you haven't already, please go to youreverydayai.com. Sign up for the free daily newsletter. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you back tomorrow and every day for more